It may not help, but it wouldn't hurt to mention that you got her name from me.
Okay.
Yeah. So here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Writing Life. I'm Stephen Long. You know, in preparation for this interview, I was thinking that literature covers all manner of topics and for different purposes. And honestly, for me, and I think for most of us, it's generally entertainment. It's something to read as you fall asleep at night. Sometimes it's a biography, maybe a little more educational. But then occasionally, it gets pretty serious, pretty heavy, and such is the case with my guest today, Kathy Beckwith. But Kathy, before we get into that aspect, you've done some other writing as well. Let's talk briefly about that, and then we'll talk about your new book.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Sure.
The first published work I had was this school curriculum guide, Don't Shoot, We May Both Be on the Same Side.
Okay.
It was for elementary school kids, and it was just a continuation or a resource for the work that I was doing then in schools in conflict resolution training and training young kids to be peer mediators. Not just young kids, through high school too.
I was going to ask you what age group this covered.
Yeah, this is written for grades 3 to 6 simply because we had to choose an age group and focus in on exercises that would be for them. But there's adaptation for using these same ideas all the way through high school.
Good.
So, and then another book somewhat similar was If You Choose Not to Hit. This is what I consider a recipe book or a how-to book for kids. It's their own guide on if they don't want to stay in a mess, but they don't want to ignore a problem, what are the skills that they can use? And the little pre-title is A Little Nonsense and a Lot of Good Sense about if you choose not to hit, a dozen skills for kids. And that was just to make it fun. There are animals that get in the same predicaments that the kids do.
Now, and before you go on, same age group?
Actually, I had an adult recently ask me about a problem-solving book for adults, and I had some copies of this then, and I said, actually, look at this book. It applies to us, the same kinds of things. Be honest about your feelings. Take a time, cool down, stop the action, think it over, talk it over, shift gears, things that are good for adults too. So, but it is elementary school age kids that it's geared for. Then I went into a young adult novel, Critical Mass. Very different kind of work for me. It was not related to conflict resolution. It was violence prevention, in that this is a book about sexual abuse in the lives of teens and what they choose, what a group of teens chose to do about it.
And again, let me stop you just a second. Recently on NPR there was an article or a segment about this kind of thing, and I don't know. I don't know that it's more prevalent now, but it's certainly more reported, and great that it's out in the open and people can start to think about it, how to avoid it, and so good for you.
Well, and this is a book, the purpose of which is to let youth know that people will talk about it.
Okay.
And that they can be involved in the prevention as well. So, I think it's a very important work. There was a special reason that I wrote this book, Playing War. And it does, in a way, tie into the one we're going to talk about. But a young kiddo came to me and said, I wish there were a war for kids. I wish we had a war for kids, a real one, because we could beat anybody big time.
Yeah.
And that same week, another little boy said, Kathy, do you know where I can get, I don't know if it was a hat or the shirt, to match the rest of his camouflage? He said, because I really want to be in a war. And I thought, we have deceived the children. We have not told them the truth of what war is. And this picture book tells the story of of a little boy that comes into a community where this little boy, Luke, loves playing war. The kids all do. And what happens when they begin to learn of his story and why he's not so good at playing war with them.
Can you give us an illustration? I mean, actually, there you.
Oh yeah. Here they're deciding what to do. It's too hot for basketball,
Sure.
so they're just, feet up on the garage door. But here the kids are planning, what is there that we can do.
Wonderful artwork.
It is beautiful watercolors done by Lee Lyon. These two boys ended up on the same team. They were the enemies, the other kids were the soldiers. And Samir decides he wants to go home instead of playing. And they have a pretty complicated little way of, doing their game. But he begins to tell the story. Because the kid says, "What?" He says, "Yeah, I was in a war." "What? Did you have an M16?
Right.
They let kids be soldiers?" And he says, "No, we didn't plan to." But this shows when children have empathy for one another, when they realize what friendship really means, they are changed. And that's what this story is, I think, as much as an opportunity for families to talk about the real consequences of war or the impact of war. It's a story about friendship with children.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, and I think that's what happened when it was time to write this book, A Mighty Case Against War. I realized we don't know the story. I believe, Steve, the subtitle of the book is What America Missed in U.S. History Class and What We All Can Do Now.
Well, and what I was going to say, I have close association with a fellow who, like the little boy who came to you, said he wanted to be in a war. Now, this is an adult. He's nearly my age. And there is a sense of camaraderie and marshaling these resources that provide opportunities that would never come in somebody's life otherwise. And I think that's what he sees. Now, I took his wish and talked to a friend who was in a war, and he's older than me, but he said, anybody who has actually been in war knows it is so horrible that none of us should ever be in that situation. And I think that that's the difference between reality and perception. That not having been there, what you see are the images that are moving or captured images, heroic deeds and so on, when it's really just awful. So, and I don't want to steal your thunder here, but from the title, we can pretty much guess the content, but tell me a little bit about that.
Well, and I didn't start with that title, too.
Okay.
That came along as the book was underway. A publisher, I had asked his opinion on the title, and he said, "Well, tell me what the book is about." And I said, "Well, it's become a mighty case against war." And he said, "That's your title."
There you go. Yeah.
So it does. The first half of the book is the story of America's wars. And so it is a history book, and it was a huge project. I'm not a historian. I had never done
Well, you are
this,
now.
And I'd never taken on that kind of project. But once I got into it, I thought this story has to be told. It is, I would say, more than surprising, it's shocking. And it becomes,
I agree.
It becomes disgusting. It becomes unworthy of us as Americans, of what most people, I think, believe we are and stand for.
You bet.
So that is the first half of the book, and it takes a very patterned format because now we know what both sides of the conflict had to say, what their stances were. So I start with what one side said, what the other side said, then some background on that war, and then alternatives to that war that are known now. Some of them were known then, but at least we know now. And then that weren't chosen, so the war was not avoided. And then the costs of that war in human lives and financial costs.
Kathy, the time is going too fast, but I know you've got some things you want to read. Could you do one of those for me?
Yeah, partway through, I made a couple of bookmarks up to gift people as as I was sharing the book with them. And one of them I realized is a pretty unusual idea for a lot of people. It's called opposites.
Okay.
So I'd like to just quote it.
Sure.
Opposites: hot, cold, little, big, war, wait. The opposite of war is not peace. The opposite of war is problem solving. That mistake of word and thought gets us in a world of trouble. The better we become at problem solving, the quicker war will slink away, obsolete, unneeded, foolish, done with, because we choose its opposite. Roll up our sleeves, face the problem, and decide what to do about it. Hot, cold, little, big, war, problem solving, opposites. Because so many times I've heard people in leadership say, we can't turn a blind eye. We can't ignore this. We can't step away from this.
But that's not what you're suggesting.
No, no one is saying to be inactive and let things happen.
Right.
It's face it as a problem, perhaps a problem of injustice, but certainly a problem, and figure out what to do about it, and be humane, be smart, be effective.
Well, again, because we're going to run out of time, read us the other one. This is now the close of your book.
Yes,
Okay.
this is the final page. Well, there's a cartoon as the last page of The Emperor's New Clothes, saying sometimes it's just the voice of a child even that says, look at what we're doing. The emperor is naked, everyone, and
Because
then
it should
everyone
be
sees.
obvious.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this is, we must speak the truth about war boldly. War is destructive. War is wasteful. War is cruel. War carries within it the seeds of resentment and retaliation. War reinforces the use of violence and power over others as a basis for making decisions. Power is not a substitute for wisdom or for justice. War is unworthy of humankind. We can build new habits if we choose to do so. We can find alternatives. Many are here now, ready to be used. One conflict resolved without violence builds potential for another, and another, and another. It is time. It's time for a world beyond war.
God bless.
And I have thought, if you ask anybody, let's have a plan for resolving international conflict. And if you said, well, the one I have in mind will be pretty destructive, wasteful, cruel, it'll build resentment and retaliation, all these things. It will use violence as a problem-solving technique. We would say, who are you?
Sure.
And how crazy it is. But I brought these frogs, Steve, because there is that story about the frog that sits in the bean pot, and the temperature is, a little bit up, raising, and the frog, because it's cold-blooded and adapts to its surroundings, doesn't even notice. And then another frog that would come hopping in would say, holy cow, it's boiling. What are you doing in here? And I just thought, even though they say there's some science about that, the size of the pot and the degrees, there is that truth that people become numb to what's around them, that we don't even consider it anymore. We don't know that we're marketed to, or we forget that. We don't realize that there are myths that are being used to keep this war thing going.
Okay. What I've concluded, not only are you have a terrific message, but you got to come back because we're out of time. And I know that you're not, we can explore this some more.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. I'm going to give people a way to contact me. Why don't you go first?
Okay,
Do you have a website?
I do.
Okay.
KathyBeckwith.com.
Okay.
K-A-T-H-Y.
Okay.
Beckwith.com.
And-
And the book is in any bookstore, $15. They'll
Okay.
order it for you, or it can be ordered online.
Great. Thank you. So I'm Steve Long. If you want to contact me, StephenWLong.com is my website. You can look on The Writing Life on Facebook, or actually my novel has a Facebook page. There's a Somebody you can look at there. If you've got a recommendation for a topic or a guest, sock it to me. So we'll see you next time on The Writing Life. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy.